Los Angeles, California. A small Japanese restaurant called Sakura House on Melrose Avenue. March 14th, 1989. Tuesday evening. 8:23 p.m. There were 19 people in that restaurant when it happened. 19 witnesses to something that was never filmed, never photographed, never put in any official record anywhere. The whole thing lasted maybe 15 seconds from start to finish. But those 15 seconds would be whispered about in martial arts gyms, on movie sets, and in back rooms of dojos for the next 30 years. Some people would call it a tall tale, a legend that grew legs and started walking on its own. Others, people who were actually sitting in those booths, eating their miso soup and their tempura, would tell you it happened exactly the way they describe it. No exaggeration, no Hollywood polish, just reality, sudden and total. Here is what nobody who was there that night disagrees on. A 250-pound professional wrestler walked into Sakura House looking to cause a scene, and he found Steven Seagal sitting quietly near the back, eating dinner alone. What happened in the next 15 seconds shattered everything that wrestler thought he understood about the human body, about fighting, and about what it actually means to be dangerous. This is the story that has been circulating in quiet corners of the martial arts world for over 3 decades. This is what really happened on March 14th, 1989, at the Sakura House restaurant on Melrose Avenue, Los Angeles. Let's set the scene properly, because the setting matters. It is a Tuesday evening in mid-March. Los Angeles in March has that particular kind of weather that can't make up its mind, warm during the day, with a cool edge that sneaks in after dark. The kind of night where you want warm food and hot tea and somewhere comfortable to sit and think. Sakura House is not a fancy restaurant. It is the kind of place where the menu has photographs of the dishes laminated onto the pages, where the lighting is soft and orange, where the booths have high wooden backs that give you a sense of privacy without actually being private. The smell of dashi broth and grilled fish fills the room. Quiet music from a small speaker behind the sushi counter. The soft clatter of chopsticks on ceramic bowls. 19 people on this particular Tuesday evening. A group of 4 businessmen in suits near the front window, talking about something they find very important. 2 young women sharing a plate of gyoza in the corner booth. An older Japanese couple eating slowly and silently in the way that people who have been married for 40 years eat together, comfortable in the quiet. A few solo diners scattered across the room. Waitstaff moving between tables with practiced efficiency. And near the back, in the booth closest to the entrance of the kitchen, sits a man eating alone. Steven Seagal is 37 years old at this point in his life. He is 6 feet 4 inches tall. Lean, but not in the way that means thin. Lean in the way that a cable is lean. All tension and function, nothing wasted. He has the long dark hair pulled back that he will become famous for in the movies he is about to make. He is wearing simple dark clothing. No jewelry. Nothing to draw attention. He is eating a bowl of soba noodles. He has a cup of green tea beside the bowl. He is not reading anything. Not looking at anything in particular. Just eating with the kind of focused calm that comes from a person who is very comfortable inside their own head. Present. Unhurried. Now, 1989 is an interesting moment in Steven Seagal's life. Because he is right on the edge of everything. His first movie, Above the Law, came out in 1988. It made money. It got people's attention. Hollywood was beginning to understand that this quiet, strange man with the unusual movement and the legitimate martial arts background was something different from what they had seen before. A second movie was in development. His name was beginning to mean something. But here is the thing most people do not know about Steven Seagal in 1989. The movies were new. The fame was new. What was not new, what had been there for a very long time, was the Aikido. Steven Seagal had spent years in Japan studying Aikido under some of the most demanding instructors alive. He had lived there, immersed himself completely. He became so skilled, so deeply trained, that he was given the honor of becoming the first foreigner to operate his own Aikido dojo in Japan. This was not a small thing. This was extraordinary. The Japanese martial arts community does not hand that distinction to someone who just knows a few techniques. They hand it to someone who has proven, over years and years of dedicated practice, that they have genuinely understood something essential. By 1989, Steven Seagal had been practicing Aikido seriously for more than 20 years. He was, by any honest measure, a legitimate expert in one of the most complex and misunderstood martial arts that exists. But sitting in that booth, eating his noodles, he did not look like any of that. He looked like a tall man having a quiet dinner, which was precisely the point. The door to Sakura House opens at 8:23 p.m. The man who walks in is named Dennis Kowalski. He goes by Big Den on the independent wrestling circuit that runs through California, Nevada, and parts of Arizona. Small venues, regional promoters, the kind of wrestling shows that happen in armories and high school gyms and casino parking lots. Not the big stage, not the national television, but real enough and lucrative enough and enough to build a reputation on. Dennis Kowalski is 31 years old, 6 feet 2 inches, 250 pounds of legitimate physical power built over 15 years of wrestling, weightlifting, and the kind of manual labor that builds real functional strength rather than gym mirror strength. His hands are enormous. His forearms look like they belong on a different species. His neck is the width of a small tree. He is also, on this particular Tuesday evening, in a bad mood that has been getting worse since approximately noon. The details of why do not matter much. A booking that fell through, money that was promised and did not arrive, a phone call that did not go the way he wanted. The kind of accumulating frustrations that, in a person with good judgment, lead to a bad evening at home watching television. In a person whose judgment is currently being significantly affected by the 4 beers and 2 whiskeys he has consumed since 6 p.m., they lead somewhere different. Dennis is not falling down drunk. He is functional drunk, alert drunk, the kind of drunk where everything feels slightly more urgent than it actually is, where the filter between the thought and the word gets thinner and thinner, where small irritations expand into big ones. He came to Sakura House because a friend told him the katsu curry was good. He is hungry. He is in a bad mood. He is looking, without fully realizing it, for a place to put that bad mood down somewhere external. He scans the restaurant the way large men who are used to being the biggest person in every room scan a new space. Taking stock, noting who is where. His eyes move past the businessmen, past the young women, past the old couple. They land on the booth near the back, on the tall man with the long dark hair eating alone. Something fires in Dennis Kowalski's brain. Something small and stupid and fueled entirely by whiskey and wounded pride looking for an outlet. He recognizes the face. Not completely, not with certainty, but something pulls at the edge of his memory. That movie, that guy. One of his wrestling friends had talked about it. Some Aikido guy who made a movie where he beat up 15 people without getting his jacket wrinkled. Made martial arts look easy. Made real fighters look like amateurs. Dennis had opinions about that movie. Strong opinions. The kind of opinions that 4 beers and 2 whiskeys make feel very important to express out loud, immediately, to the person who made the film. He walks toward the back booth. His boots are loud on the restaurant floor. The nearest waiter glances up, senses something, and keeps watching. Steven Seagal does not look up when he hears the footsteps approaching. He takes another bite of his noodles, sets his chopsticks down carefully across the edge of his bowl. Then he raises his eyes. Dennis Kowalski is standing at the edge of the booth, looming, the way large people sometimes loom intentionally, using their physical size as a kind of opening statement. His arms are at his sides. His face is flushed. "You're that Aikido guy," Dennis says. His voice is not quiet. The nearest 2 tables can hear him clearly. From the movie, Steven Seagal looks at him without any visible reaction at all. He reaches for his tea, takes a sip, sets it down. "Yes. Aikido," Dennis says, and his tone wraps around the word like it is slightly ridiculous. Like he is humoring a child who has told him that their imaginary friend can fly. The thing where you wave your arms around and everyone falls down. "That's a description," Steven says. His voice is low and very even. No anger, no amusement, just a flat, calm acknowledgement that words have been spoken. "I'm a wrestler," Dennis says. He says it the way people say things they consider self-evident. The way you would say the sky is blue or water is wet. A foundational fact that should settle the discussion before it starts. Real wrestling, not the fake stuff, before you say anything. Real fighting. I've been training since I was 16. 15 years. Okay, Steven says. Okay. Dennis repeats. And now there is something mocking in it. That's all you got? Okay. What would you like me to say? Dennis shifts his weight, leans one enormous hand against the back of the booth. The wood creaks under his palm. I'd like you to explain to me how any of that stuff you do in the movies works against someone my size. Because I've watched it, and I don't buy it. I've been in real fights, not movie fights. And I've never once seen a small technique stop a big man who really wanted to hurt someone. Steven Seagal looks at Dennis for a long moment. He appears to be thinking, not performing thinking, actually thinking, the way someone thinks when they are genuinely trying to decide something. You haven't been in a fight with someone who knows what they're doing, he says finally. The restaurant gets very quiet. Dennis's face changes. The lazy, slightly mocking expression tightens up. His eyes sharpen. The alcohol in his system, which had been making everything feel loose and easy, suddenly runs into something that wakes it up. Is that right? He says. Not a question. It's not an insult, Steven says. He hasn't moved from his relaxed position, hasn't shifted toward the edge of the booth. His hands are still on the table. Open. Relaxed. You've relied on size your whole life because size has always been enough. Against most people, it would be enough. The problem is that your size only works if your structure is intact. If I can take your structure away, your size doesn't help you anymore. It becomes a disadvantage, actually. More weight to fall. Dennis stares at him. Prove it. Steven looks at him for another moment. Sit down first, he says. Eat something. You've been drinking. I'm fine. You're functional, Steven says. That's different from fine. I'm not saying this to be difficult. I'm saying it because if you're going to understand what I show you, you need to be able to actually feel it. Drunk people don't feel things accurately. Dennis doesn't sit down, but something in the directness of the statement makes him pause. The man in the booth is not nervous. He is not posturing. He is not trying to impress anyone or establish anything. He is just talking, in the same tone someone would use to discuss a restaurant menu, about the mechanics of fighting and the limitations of alcohol on physical perception. There is something profoundly unsettling about that level of calm. There's a space by the back, one of the waiters says quietly. He is a young Japanese man, maybe 22, and he has been watching this entire exchange with wide eyes. If the gentleman want to demonstrate something. He glances at Steven. Sensei Seagal comes here often. We know him. Dennis looks at the waiter, then back at Steven. Sensei, he says, and again the mockery in his voice. They call you Sensei. Some people do, Steven says simply. He slides out of the booth, stands up. Now the height difference registers on Dennis's face. He expected to tower over this man the way he towers over most people. Instead, he is looking almost level. Steven Seagal is 6'4", the same height as Dennis, but he carries his height differently. Where Dennis occupies space aggressively, broadcasting size, Steven seems to somehow take up less space than his actual dimensions should allow. He moves toward the cleared area near the kitchen entrance, and his movement is quiet, unhurried, like water moving downhill. Dennis rolls his neck, cracks his knuckles, follows. The 19 people in Sakura House rearrange themselves without being asked. Nobody leaves. This is a universal human truth. Nobody leaves when something real is about to happen right in front of them. The businessmen swivel in their seats. The two young women stand up slightly in their booth for a better angle. The old couple, who have seen many things in their long lives, watch with the attentive patience of people who understand that certain moments matter. Steven stands in the cleared space, hands at his sides. His posture is upright but not rigid, breathing normally. He looks, frankly, like someone waiting for a bus. Dennis settles into the crouched, wide stance of a wrestler ready to shoot for a takedown. He knows what he is doing. 15 years of training lives in his muscles and his instincts. He knows how to generate power from the hips, how to time the explosion, how to close distance before a taller opponent can use their reach. You ready? Dennis asks. Whenever you are. No fighting stance. No. Dennis exhales sharply through his nose. Whatever, his expression says. He shoots forward. And here is where things become very difficult to explain to someone who has not seen real Aikido performed by a real practitioner against a real resisting opponent. Because Dennis Kowalski's hands close on empty air, not because Steven Seagal jumped backward, not because he dodged dramatically to the side. The movement that happened was so small, so minimal, so precise, that the people watching nearest to the space would struggle later to describe exactly what they saw. A turning, a slight dropping of the weight, an angle changed by maybe 12 degrees. Barely anything at all. But Dennis's momentum carries him through empty space, and his brain, which was absolutely certain that contact was about to happen, suddenly has nothing to process. He stumbles forward 1 step, 2 steps, catches himself, turns around. His face is confused. Not angry yet. Confused. The confusion of a person whose reliable experience of the physical world has just been interrupted. Again, he says. Okay, Steven says. He hasn't moved from his position. Dennis approaches more carefully this time. Arms out, trying to create a wider net, harder to evade. He is going to establish contact, establish a grip, and then impose his will. Once he has his hands on this man, really has them, it ends quickly. He has done this hundreds of times. He knows what follows. He makes contact. His right hand closes on Steven's upper arm. His left hand reaches for the shoulder. He starts to tighten the grip, starts to drive forward with his hips the way 15 years of training have made automatic. And then something extraordinary happens to his balance. He does not fall immediately. It is more gradual and more terrible than that. It is like standing on what you believe is solid ground and feeling, incrementally, that the ground is no longer quite where you thought it was. His center of gravity begins to move without his permission. His right hip is higher than his left hip when it should not be. His weight is forward when he is trying to be neutral. He is gripping Steven Seagal's arm quite firmly. And somehow that grip is the problem rather than the solution, because the arm is moving in a way that his own grip is transmitting directly into his shoulder, his elbow, his wrist, spiraling through his joints like a message he cannot refuse to receive. He goes down to 1 knee. He does not understand how he got there. His grip loosens involuntarily. He lets go. He is kneeling on the floor of the Sakura House restaurant, and the man he was trying to overpower is standing above him, and the arm that was just controlling him has been gently, precisely let go. The restaurant is completely silent. Dennis Kowalski is breathing hard. He looks up at Steven Seagal from the floor. His face has gone through the confusion, and it is now somewhere on the other side of confusion, in the territory where a person realizes that the map they have been using to navigate the world does not match the actual landscape. Steven Seagal is not even breathing differently. He looks down at Dennis with the same calm, quiet expression he had on his face when he was eating noodles. Not proud, not triumphant, not mocking. If anything, his expression is patient, educational, like a teacher watching a student absorb a difficult lesson. Stand up, Steven says gently. Dennis stands up. Your grip was your problem, Steven says. You thought the grip was control. The grip was a connection. A connection transmits force in both directions. You gave me a road right into your structure. Every pound you applied became a pound I could redirect. Dennis opens his mouth, closes it. Your size is real, Steven continues. Your strength is real. I'm not dismissing either of those things. But strength without structure is just mass. And mass follows the laws of physics. I don't have to be stronger than you. I just have to understand how you move, then move with it and give it a direction you didn't plan for. Do it again, Dennis says. His voice has changed. The aggression is still there, but it has shifted in quality. Less like a weapon now and more like a question. There's one more thing I want you to feel, Steven says. Dennis nods. Sets himself. He is sober now in a way that has nothing to do with the passing of time or the metabolism of alcohol. The adrenaline of the last few minutes has burned through most of the whiskey. His mind is clear and completely focused. He moves forward. This time he is not shooting for a takedown. He is just trying to grab, to hold, to restrain, using his mass, his reach. He gets both arms around Steven's torso. He has him. He can feel the contact, solid and real, both arms locked around the other man's body. He starts to squeeze, starts to lift. Then Steven's weight drops, just slightly, barely perceptible, but the dropping shifts the geometry of everything. Dennis's arms, which were locked around a solid cylinder, are suddenly locked around a shape that is no longer where it was, and in the fraction of a second where his grip adjusts, searching for the solid contact that was just there, Steven moves his hips. His leading foot finds the outside of Dennis's right foot, and his hands, which have come free, make brief contact with Dennis's elbow and the back of his shoulder. It is not a throw. Not exactly. It is more like a suggestion made in a language that the human body cannot say no to. Dennis Kowalski, 250 pounds of professional wrestling experience, leaves his feet. He goes horizontal, completely horizontal. For a fraction of a second, he is parallel to the floor, suspended in the air, genuinely airborne. And the ceiling of the Sakura House restaurant is directly above him. And his brain has no framework for this moment, because this should not be physically possible. He hits the floor. Steven has guided the descent, controlled it. Dennis hits hard enough for dishes to rattle on nearby tables, hard enough for the sound to make everyone in the restaurant flinch, but he is not injured. He lands flat on his back, the breath driven from his lungs, and he lies there staring at the ceiling. The restaurant is so quiet you could hear individual grains of rice falling. Steven Seagal kneels down beside Dennis Kowalski. Not over him. Beside him. The difference matters. Are you hurt? He asks. Dennis checks his body in the automatic way of someone who has been in enough physical confrontations to know the difference between hurt and damaged. He moves his arms, his legs, his back. He breathes, carefully, then more fully. He shakes his head. Good, Steven says. He stands, extends his hand. Dennis takes it. Steven pulls him to his feet with less effort than the pull should require. The two men stand facing each other. Dennis is 6'2" and 250 pounds of legitimate physical power, and he looks, in this moment, like a student. Not a humiliated one, not a broken one. Something more interesting. A student who has just encountered something so far outside their existing understanding of the world that humiliation has been bypassed entirely in favor of a more fundamental response. How, Dennis says. Just that one word. Years, Steven says simply. And emptying out everything I thought I knew, over and over again, every time I learned something new. The hardest part of Aikido is not learning the techniques. It is unlearning the assumption that force is always the answer. What happened after that moment at Sakura House on March 14, 1989, does not have the clean and satisfying ending of a movie. Real life rarely does. Dennis Kowalski drove home that night and sat in his car in his own driveway for 20 minutes before going inside. He was replaying the events on the loop that the human mind creates automatically when something genuinely surprising occurs. The way his hands closed on empty air. The way the grip that was supposed to be his advantage became the instrument of his own loss of balance. The way that soft, almost gentle contact had transmitted directly into the foundation of his physical structure and taken it apart from the inside. He did not contact Steven Seagal afterward and ask to train. He did not have a dramatic conversion moment where his entire philosophy changed overnight. What he had was slower and quieter and more permanent than that. He started reading, started asking questions, started looking at the wrestlers and fighters he worked with and noticing things he had never noticed before. The way some people absorbed force efficiently and some people fought against it and made themselves easier to move. He started to understand, in a practical and grounded way, that the mental model he had been using, bigger always beats smaller, strength always beats technique, mass always determines outcomes, was simply not accurate, and had never been accurate, and that he had never noticed because he was usually the biggest and strongest person in the room. The seed that was planted on a Tuesday evening on the floor of a Japanese restaurant grew slowly. It grew honestly. It grew into something useful. The witnesses at Sakura House told people, as witnesses always do. The story moved through the circuits it had access to, martial arts gyms, movie sets, the specific social world of people who care seriously about fighting and movement and physical philosophy. It picked up the embellishments that all stories pick up as they travel. In some versions, Dennis brought friends. In some versions, there were more people thrown. In some versions, There were police. But the core of it stayed consistent. Because the core of it was true. A large, strong, legitimately trained man walked into a restaurant looking to prove something. He found a person whose entire life's work was the careful, rigorous study of how force actually moves through the human body. And in the space of 15 seconds, everything he thought he understood was tested against reality and found incomplete. Steven Seagal finished his dinner that night after returning to his booth. The waiter brought him a fresh cup of green tea without being asked. He sat for a while longer, writing in the small notebook he always carried, notes about technique and philosophy, and the specific encounters that tested and refined his understanding. He would go on to make movies that made him famous throughout the world. Hard to Kill, Under Siege, many others. Audiences loved watching him move because the movement was real, not invented for the camera, not the product of stunt coordination alone, but the physical expression of more than 20 years of genuine daily practice. People could feel the difference, even if they could not name it. He was not perfect. Nobody is. The years brought their own complications, their own criticisms, their own controversies. But the thing that was at the center of his life, the Aikido, the study of movement and force in the relationship between attacker and defender, that was real. That had always been real. The Sakura House restaurant changed ownership twice in the decades that followed. The current version of it is a different kind of restaurant now, serves a slightly different menu, has different lighting, different booths. The physical space where 15 seconds changed one man's entire understanding of combat has been repainted and rearranged. But occasionally, not often, but occasionally, someone comes in who is older, who sits at a specific table near the back, who, when asked by a curious waiter why that particular spot, smiles in a specific way and says something brief. Something about a Tuesday night in March, a long time ago. About a big man who had all the confidence in the world going in and a very different kind of understanding coming out. About what it looks like when someone who has spent their entire life studying how force actually works meets someone who has spent their entire life trusting that force is all there is. About 15 seconds that contained an entire education. The story is still out there, moving through the circuits where people who care about these things talk to each other. Still getting told, still getting questioned, still getting defended by the people who were in that room and know what they saw. Still, in the end, about the same thing it has always been about. Not size, not strength, not aggression, understanding.